Welcome back, Fourth and Long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another AFL off-season supporter series. Strike that. This episode is a state league, so I shall say a VFL off-season supporter series chat coming to you right now. Joining us from Frankston, Victoria, Australia, that is Mr. Adam. Adam, thank you for joining me today.
No worries. How are you, Donnie?
I am not doing too bad, sir. Like an episode that I had yesterday, the beautiful background that you have behind you is something I wish I could trade you, because I'm in the middle of winter up here, and it's probably just above 0 Celsius up here. So I would trade you in a heartbeat.
It's a little bit cold here this morning, mate, but I've actually got, I don't know whether you can see it, but in the background is actually Frankston's ground, Kinetic Stadium.
Fantastic. That is
So
fantastic.
I was actually hoping to get into the club this morning and film from there, but unfortunately it's all locked up today.
Ah, darn. Oh, darn. So, alrighty, before we get into the footy, which we've kind of got a preview of who we're going to be talking about a little bit later, just a little bit about yourself outside of the game of football for the people listening.
Yeah, I'm a 51-year-old disability worker, ex-tradie, used to look after sports turf. Um, I I've lived in Frankston most of my life, so I've always had a bit of a connection to the club. Um, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I have one 23-year-old son
All
who's
right.
been taught the ways of Frankston the same as me. So,
Absolutely love it. Hey, simple sometimes is best. Let's go to it, sir. You live in football mad Victoria, so I must ask this question. What is your favorite thing about the sport of footy?
oh, look, I think the sense of community. It, it's a very tribal thing here in Melbourne, amongst the suburban clubs. Sort of beginning with the AFL clubs that you know today. Your Collingwoods, Carltons, etc. But that transfers down into the VFL level, and we've got our rivalries of our own with clubs around us like Sandringham, Port Melbourne. Um, but there's that sense of belonging with your team, and your fellow supporters, which is great. I guess I learned that being a Carlton supporter in the old VFL. um, but yeah, I very much feel that as a Frankston supporter as well. So
Fantastic, fantastic. Let's go back into the recesses. Let's go back into your memory a little bit. I love hearing this. Again, you kind of grew up with the earliest footy memory.
oh wow. That's really hard to pinpoint. I mean, growing up in Melbourne in the late 70s, early 80s, it was a given that if you're a boy, you would play footy in the winter and cricket in the summer. Um, my grandmother's uncle played for Carlton, and I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. So I was very much indoctrinated by my grandmother into being a Carlton supporter. So, we were at games by the time I was 4 or 5 years old every week. And those are probably my earliest memories. Yeah.
You absolutely. Hey, I love that, hearing that it's grandma that got you into that got you into the footy. Absolutely love. I love all the different stories are fantastic for me. Like I said, I don't have that, so I just love hearing these stories. So you've said it a few times, and where you are a Frankston supporter in the VFL, and I just got to double check this. Am I correct? And their nickname is the Dolphins?
Yeah, that is correct. Yep.
That is fantastic. I absolutely love it. Very unique nickname. Absolutely love it. But so is it because you grew up in Frankston that you became a supporter, or is there another reason why you became a Frankston supporter?
Can you do it? Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that.
Family issues
Um,
during an interview. It happens.
yeah, no, I'm in a public place and I didn't expect there to be anyone here today, but anyway, there is. Um, sorry, can you repeat that one for me, Johnny?
All righty. So we said you're a Frankston Dolphins supporter in the VFL. Is there any reason besides the fact that you grew up in Frankston that you became a Frankston supporter?
Sorry, it's raining, Donnie, and I'm struggling to hear now.
All right. You need me to speak it a little bit louder?
Yeah.
All righty. So as we kind of, would you consider yourself, did you become a Frankston supporter mainly because of where you live, or did you become a Frankston supporter for a different reason?
Yeah, look, I mean, my first memory with Frankston, my stepdad was involved in catering and had to do a job for the VFA as it was back in the day. And it was at Junction Oval for a first semi-final between Frankston and Sandringham. And that was my first VFL game. I really enjoyed it. And from there was hooked. That was 1981. So I was 9. And yeah, that, I mean, obviously being a Frankston boy, I'm fairly staunch supporter of anything that comes out of Frankston. So it was a natural progression. Yeah.
Makes sense. Just you just got to ask. I mean, sometimes you get people that live in different areas that support a different team. So I always ask. So you kind of
Yeah.
said you had a family connection, as you said, your grandmother got you get into footy, and you had some family connections. So
Mhm.
is everybody in the family Frankston supporters? And if not, does anybody support any other teams? And if so, how's the banter between each other when your teams play?
You're talking just regarding Frankston, the VFA, the
Yeah.
VFL. No, my best mate barracks of Sandringham, though, and that's a bit of an issue between us. And there's always a bit of banter there, and they're certainly traditional rivals. So, but that would be the only one I can think of.
Okay.
Yeah, the majority of my friends are strictly AFL supporters, and that's it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, the mighty AFL sometimes can be a little bit of a robber when it comes to some of the VFL clubs. So it's great to hear. So as I said, I'm trying to learn about each of these clubs, especially ones like yours that are not connected to an AFL club. So could you give me just a tiny history lesson on Frankston? Maybe how many premierships they have, how they kind of were started, and then how the club is around the city of Frankston.
Sadly, we've been a bit starved for success. We only have one premiership, and that was in what was the VFA second division in 1978. We've been in the grand final a few times, had a few heartaches. We've lost 3 grand finals in my time. The last one being 96, where we lost by 3 points to Springvale, which are now Casey Demons. And that was kind of the last kick of the day. So that was a bit of a heartbreaker, that one.
Mm-hmm.
But look, that said, there's a lot of enjoyment watching them every week. As a club, I think most supporters of other clubs would say Frankston's got plenty of character. Games down here tend to be pretty raucous. And there's a lot of banter from the crowd, so it's good fun.
Hey, as long as the environment's there and you got some atmosphere, hey, any footy is footy. It's fantastic to hear. So you've kind of thrown out some of your rivals, but do you have a biggest rival, like the one team you always want to beat each year? And who is it and why?
Oh, I think the club would say Port Melbourne.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, Port are very successful. They have been for a long time. And I mean, on a personal level, I mean, I kind of respect Port Melbourne. I don't really feel that need to beat them. It's enjoyable when we do, but
Mhm.
for mine, it's Williamstown. I always want us to beat Williamstown. They've kind of, in my view, have always looked down their noses at Frankston a bit. So, yeah, beating Williamstown is very pleasurable. Last year we did it at Williamstown, so that was great.
I love it. I love the animosity sometimes is fantastic. All right. So as you said, you've been a Frankston fan for a long time. So this may not be as easy for some people. What is the first Frankston item that you were ever given or bought?
I've actually got it on. I've got my old scarf that I've had for years,
Fantastic.
which I bought probably 15 years ago, I think. It's the only one I've ever had. So,
That is fantastic. Absolutely love.
yep.
And then the best part is you get to keepsake, you get to stay with it. That's absolutely fantastic. So, as you said, you've lived in Frankston, you grew up in Frankston, so you were Frankston through and through. So I love this when I do this is that I believe being a fan of sports teams is a unique thing because you have to be a special kind of crazy to throw your emotions sometimes into something that is very unpredictable. So I like hearing this. Can you describe to me your fandom of the club? How like are you at every single home game that you could possibly get to? You try to get to road games when you can, or can you separate yourself a little bit from the club?
No, we my son and I will go to pretty much every home game. Um, Away games, we might dodge them depending on sort of. I think we missed North Melbourne last year because there's just no parking there. Um, Werribee's kind of 2 hours away, so I think we might have skipped that one. But we'll get to as many of them as we can. Now we've got also the interstate trips with the Sydney and Queensland clubs. And we're actually maybe considering going up to the Gold Coast this year to watch them play. So fair to say we're pretty staunch supporters. Yeah.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I absolutely love it. And the fact that you can travel and it relatively is relatively easy to travel when it comes to it. So that's absolutely fantastic. So you kind of answered this just a little this bit with your first memory of footy, but your first game that you attended of Frankston.
Yeah, that semi-final against Sandringham. I remember it well because Frankston were 25 points up at halftime and caved in and lost.
No.
But I don't know if you know of Rex Hunt.
I've heard of him, yes.
Big Rexy was still playing back in those days.
Oh boy.
And he fell forward for Sandringham. And causing a lot of angst with Frankston boys, as he always did. And I remember that stood out on the day was Rex and his antics in the forward line. But it was a very entertaining game of footy. Back in those days, they only had 16 a side in the VFL, so it was very free flowing footy. Yeah, and it was a great game to watch. And obviously, I fell in love with the VFA at that point. So yeah.
That's fantastic. All right. So my next question, I've compared this to as a parent of multiple kids having to choose your favorite child. And I know sometimes this is never easy because so many people have so many great memories with the history. Favorite player of the past that's worn the Frankston jumper and favorite player currently on the Dolphins list.
Gee, that tests me out. I've never been asked that before. When I was a kid, there were two players who were icons of the club. We had a rover named Brian Jones who wore number 10, I remember, and a lot of kids would be out there with the number 10 on their jumper. And he was, your typical 80s style rover, nuggety, getting in under the packs. And I remember admiring the way he went about it. We also had a guy named Peter Geddes who's still involved at the club. He was a ruckman and won the JJ Liston Trophy for competition Bassett Ferris. And he was a great player to watch. Really a great ruckman that I think could have played in the VFL as it was. These days, probably our centreman Will Fordham. Number 7. Who would I compare him to in AFL? Probably you'd say he's a poor man's Chris Judd, I guess, in a way. Obviously, he's not going to be at the level of Chris Judd, but I like his loyalty. He came to us from North Melbourne, but he's actually a Parkdale boy, and he could have gone back to his local club and was stuck with us for probably 10 years now. But very, very good player by VFL standards. Yeah.
Fantastic. Absolutely love it. And the best part is that these are names that I hear that I may never see in the VFL. So in the AFL. So to learn new players and potentially have that knowledge base is great for me. So my next question, I love this because I love seeing the sparkle in people's eyes when I ask this question because it's always one of my favorites. Most memorable moment of all time as a Frankston supporter.
Oh, do you know what? I think it was actually last season. We played Carlton, and of course, strange for me being a Carlton supporter,
Mhm.
but I'm definitely a Frankston supporter when the two play each other. Um, and we played Carlton in a night game early in the season, and it was a damp, dingy night, if I can set the scene for you. And
Mhm.
at 3/4 time, we were down. I think it was 12-5 to 4-5. All hope is gone. Yeah,
Mhm.
no. Came home with a wet sail. I think it was 10-2 for the quarter. Won the game
Awesome.
by 8 points. I've never seen a comeback like it. So, yeah, I think that stands out as probably the most memorable moment ever. That one.
Those are the
Yeah.
ones you can close your eyes and you can just see them. I absolutely love it. And the smile on your face, as you said, it was absolutely fantastic. Like I said, you can feel the joy when they describe that. So as we just
It
kind of
was
said, this
pretty euphoric at the time. Yeah.
oh, I can only imagine when looking all hope is lost and you go on a fantastic 10-2 run to end the game. That's you can't ask for anything better than that. So,
No.
which is kind of a great natural progression for me is that we've done the past a little bit. Let's go a little bit more to the present. And I want to ask you about last season. So I wanted to do some research. I wanted to look in because I don't like going and asking the question, how was your season? And having absolutely no knowledge. So I went through it. I didn't get a chance to go through all of it, but I did look at the ladder, seeing that last year, kind of a tough one last year, 6-12,
Oh,
only 24 points, 17th on the ladder. But then again, no, as I think a lot of people in the VFL unfortunately have to admit, it is hard being an unattached club, not to an AFL side, because you don't have the same advantages of having AFLers that can come down and play. So, your thoughts on Frankston's season again as an unattached team? Not a bad season, but it is frustrating being in the bottom part of the ladder and seeing all those AFL clubs in the finals.
if you were to examine the season maybe even a bit closer, you would see we lost the majority of our games by under 2 goals. Um, so it was a season of, I guess, what could have been. Um, Early in the year, we were in pretty good form. We had a very good list last year. Uh, Casey Demons, I think, when we played them, had not been beaten. Nobody
Mhm.
had got anywhere near them. Um, they beat us by 3 goals, and we were ahead of them in the last quarter. Um, and I guess that game, and then Brisbane the next week, we lost by a kick. Um, yeah, those games kind of summarised our season.
Mhm.
Um, and to add further insult to injury, I think the last 2 rounds we played really good footy against Richmond and Port Melbourne, and managed to cough up a big lead against Port and lose by 4 points, and lost to Richmond by 6 points, I think.
Mhm.
And that just typified the season, and it ended up with us sort of finishing below Port, which was a bit of a kick in the teeth.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, on paper doesn't really give you an insight into what sort of season it was. I think for the majority of Frankston supporters, we felt that it was actually a really good year that could have been a lot better.
It's
Yeah,
just almost a season of what ifs. You go, what if you got that game over the KC Demons when they had been so dominant? What if you didn't cough up a lead late? So it's one of those. Could you see it? And you look at it too. I mean, the only unattached side that made the finals last year is Southport, and from everything that I gather, Southport was basically a super team of all of the Queensland clubs kind of put
yeah.
together that had left the NEFL to join the VFL. So there's almost a little bit of asterisk on Southport a little bit because they made it, but they were kind of a super team from what I gather.
Yeah, they're. I think there were 3 or 4 good teams in Queensland that could easily have come down and played. but bailed out for financial reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, yeah, all of those players ended up at Southport. And they're pretty cashed up as well at Southport. So they were always going to be very difficult. Um, I think towards the end of the year, I noticed that a few teams had worked them out.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't. They were having big wins at home often, and that kind of steadied towards the end of the year, and teams are getting pretty close to them. So I think we'll find this year Southport might struggle a little bit more. They're no longer the unknown quantity.
Yeah, it'll be interesting as you kind of said. I agree. I think last year they kind of caught some
Yes,
people off guard. It'll be
if you want
fascinating.
to equate it to US terms, it'd be like taking a college football team from California
Mm-hmm.
and dumping them in the Texas system where no one's seen them before. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a fair advantage. So
And throw several school districts together too. So we've got
yeah,
the best possible players. So yeah, that's a great. I love that analogy. Absolutely fantastic. So as you said, a season of what ifs. Unfortunately, so now we go to the off season again. We're kind of in that off season. We're getting closer and closer to the start of the season, not only for AFL but also for VFL as well. So and in discussions, I kind of realized that with the state sides, their off season is much different. It's not like the AFL. You don't have trade period. You don't have the draft. It pretty much is find the delisted free agents that are out there, find the people that are unattached, and sign them. So, do you keep an eye on the off season? And if so, has Frankston done anything? Have they lost any to retirement? Have they made any signings?
well, look, the AFL trade period and draft does make a big difference to us.
Mm-hmm.
Frankston's probably the best known club in the VFL for being a pathway to the AFL. And yet again, we've had two of our best players drafted, which is great. You know, like we're very pleased for them. But by the same token, they're two blokes we really can't afford to lose. We've
Mm-hmm.
lost our ruckman and our key forward. Liam Reedy's gone to Fremantle and Brady McLaughlin's gone to the Gold Coast. So that's going to hurt. I know they went after a couple of ex-AFL players and didn't get them. So we're kind of back to, getting players from the NAB League, which means rebuilding again, which is a bit of a constant frustration for us at Frankston. You know, every time we build a team that we feel threatening, players get drafted, and like I say, we've got a very strong local comp down here that are taking players away from us as well. If we had the pick of those clubs, we'd have pretty much a super team in the VFL. So,
yeah.
Look, there's always some diamonds in the rough that come out of the NAB League, and I believe a couple of the ones we've recruited are talls, and that's what we need. We've got a lot of good midfielders, so if we can find a couple of forwards out of there, we'll be going okay.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's one of those you feel bad saying it, but you're almost punished by your success because your success means eyeballs, and with eyeballs means your players get looked at and that they potentially could get drafted. But if you're not very good, then you're not good. So it's kind of one of those you're a victim to your own success, unfortunately. So I can feel your frustration on that, and it is one of those where it's like the AFL can be kind of a bully, especially the mid-season draft. Really, I can tell the frustration by the waffle, the sample, and even the VFL of this mid-season draft because it really does hamper some teams that are really good because they have players that they're like, oh my god, I have a chance to be drafted. I'm gonna put my name up, and then if they get drafted, well, now the team now has to try to change everything about their season because maybe their best player is now donning and is now going to go play AFL footy. So
it'll always be a key player. Yeah,
exactly. Well, and that's the problem, and that's the issue that you run into it. And then the other part is that they might go to the AFL, spend 6 months, and then get spit right back out, and now they're unattached and they can go sign anywhere they want. So it is a frustration that I completely agree with.
It's been a frustration for me as a supporter is that we have had that situation happen often. And you see that player leave the AFL and rather than come back to us, they'll go to another VFL club or they'll go back to the local league. And you think, mate, why couldn't you just come back? You know?
You almost want to
But
slip
you
a
know,
piece of paper in and going, "Hey, if you don't make it, come on back. You'll have your spot and plain and easy." And it just unfortunately, it's just not that simple.
yeah,
Frustrating. I can tell your frustration. I feel you, sir. Trust me. As much as I appreciate the AFL, there are some times that I do think they bully the state leagues a little too much for me. So I am on your side on that one. So as frustrating as it is, we need to look towards next year. And I like finding this out because again, every footy season is different. I mean, I think everybody comes in first game, first season, going, we have a chance at the flag, and then play starts, and then who knows what happens. So I always ask this: what are your thoughts on next year? Do you see Frankston being a team maybe jumping up the ladder a bit? Do you see maybe you fix the issues and you don't have the what ifs, but the wins in the close games? What are your thoughts going in for next year?
um, look, I'd love to think that we could threaten for the finals. That would be incredible if we could, given the players we've lost. Um, but look, I think if we could jump up another couple of spots on the table, that would be a success for the year. I think we've got to just consolidate with what we've got at the moment. And look, like I say, I mean, we're pretty good through the midfield, and it's just a matter of finding out what those tools are going to bring to us, either up front or down back. And I guess it's just an unknown until we get a look at those guys. So
Mm-hmm.
like they always say, hope springs eternal at the start of every year, and you know, we'll wait and see what happens come round one.
Pretty much, the ball goes up and then reality hits, but we'll have to see. Hey, hey, everything,
That too.
everything is fun until round one starts. I can't wait. So, all right, I love this next. I love this next question that I have here because it is very much. I know at least over here in the states, it is huge that everybody wants to be the general manager or the list manager, as they say in Australia. So I like having fun with this. For one day, I'm going to install you as the list manager for the Frankston Footy Club. All of
Okay.
the clubs in the VFL are completely free. You can nick one player, sign them to Frankston for this season. Who's that one player you bring to the Dolphins to maybe get them over the hump this season?
Um. Oh, gee, I don't remember them all by name, but Casey Demons seem to have this never-ending supply of tall forwards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and every time we play them, it seems like they've got four of them. I'd take any one of them. And
Mm-hmm.
the difference that would make to us to just have that one guy up forward that we know we can pump the ball down there too.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to watch our game plan, it's very precise because we're always trying to get the ball to a small forward
Mm-hmm.
because we just don't have any bigs. Um, so just to have that ability to occasionally bomb it down there and know we've got someone up front,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be very handy.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, if they crash the pack, at least you give you a crumb for your small forwards to go off of too. So
Exactly.
it gives you
Yeah.
a target guy that even if he doesn't mark it, as long as he can contest the possession, make sure it's not an intercept mark, crumbs down. Now your small forwards can get after it. So I absolutely love that. And again, there's so many, and unfortunately, it always just kind of a rotating glass there, especially considering several of them play in the AFL as well. So we jump to it. My next question, unfortunately, I'm going to ask it, but I'm a little sad about this. Is I am a huge supporter of women's footy. I think women's footy is a area of footy that I think is a growth area, not only for the AFL but for all clubs throughout the country. Because I think women's footy has a enthusiasm that it is growing and growing and growing. And unfortunately, as I saw, Frankston does not have a VFLW squad. I asked
Ah,
this, do you know why they don't, or is it just primarily because most of the clubs are kind of having issues because the AFL and the VFLW seasons for the longest time were around the same time period?
we've actually we do have Frankston does have the women's team.
Mhm.
They just play in a different league.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
they're playing in the Southeastern Women's Football League, I believe.
Okay.
Um, and I think the reason for that is that they realised when they put their list together that they didn't have a strong enough list for the VFL yet. So I think their intended progression is to get to VFL level at some point, but they're not quite there yet.
Okay. Well, I actually, this makes me smile because I love hearing that your club at least has a team. It's one of those. I apologize for the assumption there because I looked at the VFLW and did not see Frankston there. So thank you for letting me know that they do have a women's club. And do you keep an eye on it? Do you try to go to games whenever they play?
Um, I don't because I'm probably a little too busy to get to 2 games a weekend.
Okay.
But yeah, I know my son pays more attention to it than I do.
Hmm.
And it's interesting that the kids I'm finding are really getting into it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I could ask him a lot more, and he could tell you a lot more about it than I could. Yeah, but
Hey,
I mean, we watch the AFL women's most weekends and watch Carlton play, and I have nephews that play footy, and every time I'm down at their junior footy, there's girls teams everywhere. So
hmm.
I mean, you are right; it is taking off big time. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it's great. It's great to see the girls out there playing.
I truly appreciate it, and I love your honesty on that. What I really kind of I think is kind of hard when it comes to the women's game is that you have many detractors that I think look at the game and they stick their nose up at it, and I think it is a different game, and I think you just have to let it breathe and let it have some time. But I think keep an eye on it. There are some women that honestly are going to be so much fun to watch over these next 10 years. There are some super talents coming through. So I cannot wait to watch that. So I
Oh,
appreciate your honesty on that, sir.
yeah. Look, Johnny, I think most of us are wrapped that the girls are playing the game now. I think
Hmm.
there's a lot of consternation about the actual AFLW,
Hmm.
um, probably in that it's been pushed into being a professional league a little too quickly in a lot of people's view.
Hmm.
Um, given that up till about 10 years ago, there were no women's teams at all. So,
Hmm.
um, so a lot of people sort of say, the skill level's not there yet to be a professional sport. We compare. I mean, here in Australia, we're very spoilt with our women's sporting teams.
Hmm.
The Matildas and the soccer are very good, as are the Opals and the basketball.
Hmm.
And we're used to high quality women's sport. That's not denigrating from the AFLW at all,
Hmm.
but
No,
um,
none taken.
they're not ready for that level yet, and I think Australians expect that level of performance. So, look, they'll get there, but it's going to take time.
I agree. 100% agree. And don't and I know this is an American, but I know your the women's cricket team is absolutely, I mean, dominant beyond belief. One of the best cricket teams in the entire world for sure.
Hmm.
I'm slowly getting into cricket, so I have to make sure and throw that out there for sure. So as you,
I was trying to restrict it to teams you might know. Yeah.
it's perfectly fine. You're not the first person. I 100% understand that. So, oh yeah, the
But great that
Matildas.
you know about
I
cricket, Donnie. Good, go
oh,
you.
hey, I watch the Ashes whenever I can. I try to watch it. The only issue is the one way I've been watching cricket is not playing the India series currently. So right now I'm kind of starved to know how they're going, but everything that I'm seeing is not as great as I think they probably should. And I know there's a lot of consternation on some selection, but this is a footy pod, not a cricket pod. So
Yep,
we'll
yep.
talk about
We'll
that
do that
after.
another day.
So as you kind of said, your AFL side is Carleton, which you got into back in the VFA with your grandma. So so that's kind of how you became it. So and you I had already said that you were an AFLW watcher. You support the Carleton women there. So kind of we'll go off this. Is it difficult sometimes when it comes to it being both a VFL and an AFL supporter, or are you able to kind of split those sides a little bit?
Yeah, I tend to be able to split them pretty well. Look, I grew up a very one-eyed Carlton supporter,
Hmm.
um, but I'll admit the AFL has lost me over the years.
Hmm.
Uh, the more professional it's become, the more it's been taken away from the people.
Hmm.
Um, Ground rationalisation, getting away from the suburban grounds, to
Hmm.
me has hurt the game. Um, it may bring more people in to watch, but the game's slowly losing its tribalism. So these days, I mean, I consider myself much more passionate about Frankston than I am about Carlton, which is something I never thought I would say. But yeah, when Carlton play Frankston, it's a no-brainer. You know, it's whop those Silvertails Dolphins, get into it.
Hey, I absolutely love it. That's fantastic. And I agree. I think it's one of the things also, and not to go back to the previous subject, but I think it's also one of the reasons why I kind of appreciate the women's game a little bit because they are still played at suburban grounds. There is a little bit more of a close-knit connection with the fans. The AFL, I mean, it's not as bad as sports over here. I mean, sports over here, the athletes are on an astronomically different world than the average everyday guy. But over in Australia, at least you're a little bit closer. But I agree with you that it is kind of it's being scrubbed into almost this super professional way to where it's like they are kind of don't argued a little bit away from the fans. I don't think as much as over here, but I can see your frustration because
The trouble we've
it does
got,
take
Donnie,
away a little bit.
is that the AFL clubs and the AFL themselves have kind of used the NFL as an example of what we want to be.
Oh yeah.
And I think to myself, oh no, we don't, and no, we can't cope with that. We don't have an economy that's going to cope with that. So, and you're also looking at a place that has 8 major cities, and 3 of those are questionable. So,
yeah, you can make that argument.
we can't support that number of teams or that those kind of salaries for players. But this is the thing: is that our icons for our kids growing up have gone from being, Bruce Dool and Peter Moore to being LeBron James and Patrick Mahomes. So we're just getting this expectation here that the game will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the money will get bigger and bigger and bigger. But something's got to give, my friend.
You will not hear an argument from me. Once we're done with this podcast, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about a subject that I think is very interesting that I've thrown up to a few people, and I love asking your thoughts on this. So we'll do that after the podcast. So, all right, we'll actually go. This is actually a great transition for me because as we kind of discussed, you said that you don't like the transition to kind of Americanize the AFL. So I was surprised after 2020 and 2021, the grand final of the AFL found itself outside of Victoria in the Gabba and Optus Stadium. I'm not telling you something you don't already know, but it's kind of my lead in is the fact I was surprised that Victorian media for the AFL started kind of bringing up the topic of should the AFL consider, again, 50-year contract with the MCC, pie in the sky, I know, but stay with me. Should the AFL consider maybe making the grand final a traveling grand final? And again, I have no skin in the game here. I just want to hear people's opinion on this.
Yeah.
Or are you somebody, it must be at the MCG. It's the biggest in the country. There's at least stay with some tradition in the game of footy.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I'll probably put a lot of people offside with this opinion.
Okay.
Look, I mean, you would understand that the AFL was born out of the VFL. That to me was mistake number one. So Victorians still think that the AFL belongs to them, and it doesn't. Although we have 10 teams out of the 18 in it, so and the grand finals always been the MCG, and I can tell you, I've been to 12 or 13 grand finals, and the atmosphere is something to behold, and I can understand why nobody wants it moving. 100,000 people baying for blood is pretty awesome. But I think in this day and age, really the team that finishes on top and earns the right should be hosting the grand final. Or you go to a system like the US has where you're rotating cities year to year. But I don't really know that works because we probably only have I think we've only got 3 stadiums really that are big enough
Okay.
to do it on that sort of rotating
Hmm.
scale.
Oh,
Yeah,
makes
and
sense.
I can't see why should Brisbane finish on top and and win their way through the finals. Brisbane hosts the grand final.
Hmm.
30,000 people or not.
It's an argument. It's an argument I find fascinating, and it's one of those that I've another topic we can talk about later a little bit. But I find it fascinating that I have heard many people say, "Well, the most people can go to the game." I said, "Well, honestly, here's a fact that I think many people forget about in Australia is that." Do many Australians realize that the three biggest football stadiums in the US are not actually NFL stadiums? They're not.
No, they're college
They're
stadiums.
college
Yeah.
stadiums.
Yeah.
Penn State, Tennessee, and Michigan. None of them have hosted a Super Bowl. They
Mm.
all are 100,000. So the argument, and I've stated this a few times, the argument that we need to get the most people in, it doesn't happen over here, and we have 10 times the money. So the argument that finances is the only reason why 100,000, it's ridiculous. It's because the corporates is because that's how they're getting their money is so many tickets are sold to corporate people. Where
Oh,
if you go to an Optus Stadium, you go to an Adelaide Oval, you go to Sydney, which I think you probably may use the Accor Stadium or whatever it is that's like an 80,000 one that nobody likes playing footy on because it's built for rugby, not for the AFL. I don't like the argument because
mm.
I think it's too simplistic. It's not that simple because the US can contradict it. Like I said, the three biggest arenas that you could get so much more money if you did the Super Bowl ticket prices at
I think the
Michigan
big killer,
Stadium.
Donnie, I think the big killer is that, like I say, you only have really those 3 stadiums, being Perth Stadium,
Hmm.
the MCG, and Accor Stadium,
Hmm.
that can cope with those numbers.
Hmm.
And I think Perth would be the lowest at maybe 60,000.
Yep, it's at 60,
The
65, I
trouble
think
you've got
max.
is, say you end up with Gold Coast or GWS hosting a grand final,
I've said that when it comes to
you're playing it
Victoria.
in front of 25,000 people.
Exactly.
And it's just not a good look,
I know. And that's what I
So,
said to Victoria. I said, "What if you get a GWS Gold Coast final? How are the Victorians going to go?" I mean,
oh, we've had it.
it's an interesting conversation.
We had a Port Melbourne Brisbane grand final.
Yep.
So, sorry, Port Adelaide Brisbane.
Yep.
And you know what? They still packed it with 100,000.
True.
So,
But
um,
but it's a little bit different because Port Adelaide is SA. SA is a huge footy state. In Queensland, you had a little bit of you had the Fitzroy connection a little bit there. So I think there's a little bit that you could argue. I think it's a little bit of apples and oranges where you say Gold Coast, GWS, who are, I mean, poof, they're clubs. And so
mm.
a little
Well,
bit
we've
of a different.
also had 2 Sydney West Coast grand finals too. So,
True. But
um,
again, then your argument with Sydney is Old
Sydney,
South.
yeah, a lot of old blood supporters there. Yeah.
Old South, yeah. Absolutely. I love this.
Look,
I love this
Victorians are footy
conversation. This
mad, mate. I think we'd turn up to watch anyone play.
I'm
But
not going to disagree with you on that
but
fact.
but I'm but I am with you in that I think we can't have our cake and eat it too.
Mhm.
We wanted to be in the AFL. We wanted to be the AFL,
Mhm.
and that means that the clubs from interstate, if they earn the right, why shouldn't they be hosting?
Completely valid. Again, there's no wrong argument. Again, I think the MCC's 50-year contract is going to, I mean, it's got everybody hand tied for the next 48 and a half years. So it is not something that's going to come up anytime in my lifetime or yours, unfortunately. But it's an interesting topic that I was surprised was brought up. So we go from that, as you said, footy mad state in Victoria to another footy mad state in South Australia because in the AFL's wisdom, they decided, hey, NRL, we love your magic round idea. We're going to thieve it and we're going to call it Gather Round, which the name we won't get into that particular topic right now, but I'm fascinated by this because all 9 games, all of the 18 clubs will find themselves in South Australia, most of them in Adelaide. I'm interested as a Victorian. I know sometimes this South Australian Victorian little rivalry can get a little tense, shall we say. Your thoughts on this that Adelaide gets this gather round and then is there any interest in slipping over to SA and catching a few AFL games over in South
Oh,
Australia?
yeah, look, on a personal level, I love Adelaide. So um, it's one of my favourite places to visit. So, um, but interestingly, we're going over there to play the Crows, Carl. So
Hmm.
um, it's not really any different for us. I mean, it'd be fascinating to me, I think, if we were playing Essendon or Collingwood over there.
Hmm.
Since we're just playing the Crows in Adelaide, well, it's
A
no
road
different.
game.
Yeah.
It's just a
Um,
road game.
and I've not yet,
Uh,
mind you, I've never been to a game at Adelaide Oval, and I wouldn't mind seeing one.
it would be fantastic. I'm just like I said, the one thing that I pray for, I don't think the crowds are going to be a problem no matter where they are. I know Norwood Oval is hosting a few games. I think Glenelg might even be the other one. And but I'm very fascinated. I just hope the weather is okay. That is my one worry, that the weather, because if it rains, that Adelaide Oval is going to be absolutely destroyed by Sunday. So I hope for good weather in Adelaide in that. I think it's this first weekend in April. So we'll cross our fingers on that
Oh,
one.
look, as a former turfie, I used to look after sports grounds, so
Mm,
um, I can tell you that they'll cope with it. It'll recover. Um, one week, it's the constant wear and tear of multiple games week after week.
mhm.
And like if you look at the old '80s grounds in Melbourne,
Oh yeah.
that were covered in mud, they had 3 games a weekend on them.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So it was just that pounding and pounding and pounding. Whereas, yeah, if Adelaide Oval's got to have a couple of days, it's then got a week to recover. So
Mhm.
there'll be no training on it. So they'll be right. They'll survive.
It'll be okay eventually. All
Yeah.
righty. So my final questions are some fun ones because as I've told many people, it is on my bucket list to get Australia. I want to see some footy games in SCG, MCG, Adelaide Oval, all of them that I can, because I thoroughly enjoy. I want to see each of the big stadiums. So I'm doing a little bit of research with all of the people that I'm talking to kind of make sure that when I go, I'm ready. So, as an American, we love our food when it comes to the sport. So, I asked this: what's your go-to food when you go to the footy?
Um, you've got to have a pie, really. If you're a visitor, you've got to have a pie and chips, I think. Um, for us, I mean, as regulars at the footy, we take a thermos full of hot dogs with us. We make up our own hot dogs at the game.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
yeah. Um, we do it old school, mate. Yeah, I take coffee with me, the whole works. So, but yeah, I think if you're visiting and you're just going to one game, can't go wrong with pie and chips, mate.
Yep. For me,
Yep.
the hot chips and the pie are the two most popular when it comes
Plenty
to
of
it.
salt and vinegar on your chips, mate.
All right, all right. So in the other one is, if I'm going to sit at a game, I want to be sure I get the best possible place. I want to be able to enjoy the game, to see footy in all its majesty. So where is your go-to place to sit when you go to the footy?
Oh, look, if you can possibly get it, you want to be right on the wing. Um, Probably second level if you're at the MCG. I always prefer that slightly elevated position where a lot of people like to be down by the fence, but to me, you don't get a good view of what's going on tactically. Whereas, if you're up on that second or third level, pretty perfect view. Yeah. But it's all AFL members around there, so good luck getting one of those seats.
I know that's the one thing I've been told when it comes to it. The most elite place is probably where most of the
There's
members
always
sit.
someone that'll have a ticket that can get you in there, mate.
Well, we'll figure it out. I know. I surprisingly, with the people that I talk to, I may have some interesting connections to be able to at least get a good seat when it comes to, hey, if I get to go to the footy, I get to go to the footy. I'm not going to complain at all. So the last question that I love asking, just because for me this has been great. I'm kind of cataloging some of these great games that people have had the luxury of seeing. So I ask this of you: favorite game of footy you have ever seen, live, on the telly, at the ground, doesn't matter. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen.
Yeah, okay. Look, yeah, it's going to be a Carlton one. Um, I mean, the Frankston game last year against Carlton is right up there. But look, and this will sound really bitter and twisted, but half of my family broke for Carlton and the other half broke for Essendon. And there's, you say it's a friendly rivalry. Not in our family, not really. um, People could die over it. And we've had some big, big games over the years. The 99 preliminary final, when Essendon were massively favoured to beat Carlton.
Mm-hmm.
And Carlton were really a second-rate team. Carlton got up by a point. And we didn't win the flag, but we made sure Essendon did, and that's all that mattered. So that one goes down as probably the greatest memory of all, I think.
I don't think you're the first. I don't think you're the first person to tell me that, because I think there was another person I know that's a huge Carlton supporter that said the exact. I think they said the exact same game. I can't. I'm for
Much
the
as
life of me can't
Carlton,
remember, but that was the exact same. They were like, we couldn't win the flag, but we damn sure made sure Essendon didn't. So that
look,
was
we got
great.
belted by North Melbourne the next week, and I don't think any Carlton supporter cared.
Yeah, I think I heard that they was like, we probably shouldn't have been there. It probably should have been Essendon, but we, you know what, to make Essendon not get it was worth it. So
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Absolutely love it. Well, Adam, this has absolutely been a fantastic conversation. I love hearing your stories. We had our little issue there, but we were able to get this through. It's been a fantastic talking with you and learning about the Frankston Footy Club. So thank you very much for sitting down and having a chat with me today.
My pleasure, Donnie. Anytime.
Awesome, awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our episode today. We have more chats still coming up. We are getting closer and closer to the AFL season and more reviews and all that. So stay tuned, and we will be back again very, very soon.